Hi, Gabby. Thanks for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi. So my name is Gabby. I work in the business side of behavioral health with behavioral health providers, and I'm also an author. I have a book coming out on January 12th called South of Happily. It's a humorous women's fiction, and I am a space geek, so I wanted to get on here.
I really appreciate that. So what got you into writing?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I've been writing for a long time, and I remember a couple of my friends a long time ago. I would write emails, and they would write back to me and say, you write the weirdest damn emails. Can you please just make a book out of it?" And I thought, oh, okay. And then unfortunately, my father passed away, and I started writing sort of as therapy. And that I wrote that book for about 20 years, and it evolved and changed as I changed, and that's the book that I'm publishing. And it's about very serious things, but it's really funny, evidently, though I wasn't going for that, but it's the way that I think, so that's how it came out. So I just love writing. I love it. It makes me I sit there and I write, and I like kind of giggle when I write, which is probably the right reaction.
That's awesome. I'll have to check it out. So what got you into space?
I've just always loved space, and honestly, I remember I was thinking about this, and I remember when I was probably like 12 or 13, I would go on Sunday mornings. Remember when you would get that like big paper on Sunday mornings? I would walk up with my dad to the 7-Eleven where we lived, and he would just start telling me about space. And he loved Carl Sagan, and he loved space, and I think that's what got it in me. I just love it. I just think it's fascinating. It's
Uh,
endless. It's infinite.
yeah,
It's crazy.
that's true. That's true. Well, do you have any particular moments of something that you heard or saw that particularly captivated you?
You know, we've been so many, just how infinite it is. And I'm such an obnoxious person. I'm always saying, when they say that the universe is, whatever it is, 3 point, I don't even know what it is, whatever billions of years old or whatever. I always think, well, how do you know that really? I mean, how do we really know? I feel like every time they find something new, you hear on TV, they say, well, this is what the scientists thought, but we were wrong. So I thought, well, what else don't we know? And I listened to planetary radio. Definitely during the pandemic, I started listening to planetary radio and got completely hooked on that and all of the people that they have on there. It's a really cool show. And my husband watches YouTube every single night before he goes to bed just to see what's going on at SpaceX. So it's just been going on for a long time. It's just so weird, it's I think actually now that you're saying it, I had a friend of a friend a long time ago who would tell me that space is finite. And I used to argue with him because I used to say, well, he'd say space ends here, like here we are, and space ends here. And I'd always be like, what's over here? You
Hmm.
know? And he could never answer that. And so it's just crazy to think what's out there.
It is. It is. Well, did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon?
Yep. Yep.
How did you find out about it?
Probably probably on YouTube somewhere, probably from my husband. I don't know. I feel like they did. I'm sure they've talked about that on planetary radio. It just got into my universe somehow since I pay attention to it. I think it's great.
Would it surprise you that most of the people I randomly talk to on the streets or at the mall or at the coffee shop don't have any idea we're going back to the moon?
I'm not sh- I feel like that surprises me kind of, but in some ways it doesn't surprise me. I think people have their little spaces that they have interest in and maybe don't go out of those spaces so much. But yeah, it's kind of surprising, how people are not paying attention to, what's out there.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting talking about that big Sunday newspaper. A lot of people are probably interested in maybe the comics or the sports page or the business section,
Exactly.
but they would have to scan over the other sections to get to it. Now you don't even see the stuff you're not interested in.
Right, right. you have to look, you have to keep your brain open, you have to keep your mind open. And I think a lot of people don't. Maybe.
Uh, well, you mentioned that you think it's great. If you had to convince somebody that it was a really worthwhile endeavor, how would you go about it?
Oh my gosh. Um, I think partially because we learn so much from going into space. I think a lot of people who don't pay attention don't know what things are invented and created and figured out in science because of what's happened in space. So I think convincing them that what happens on the Earth might improve if we learn what's happening in space, maybe would get them going. Also, I think it's a really cool launching thing. I mean, I think that's part of why they're doing it, right? We get to the moon, we get a base on the moon. We can go farther a lot easier with a lot less fuel. I don't know if that's right, but that's sort of my understanding. That we can take is I don't know if that's true. We can take off from the moon a lot easier than we can take off. There's less atmosphere, right? We can go easier from the moon than we can from Earth. So anything that saves fuel, that does bug me a little bit, all the fuel that we spend, but I think it's a necessary evil that way.
Where do you see humanity in 200 years?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, if we don't kill each other, I mean that's the first thing because we're not doing a great job with behaving on this planet. Hopefully far more advanced, than we are. If I've thought, and I've been saying this for a while, if we could all on Earth stop fighting and arguing because really we're this tiny little planet. We're so insignificant in some ways, and if we could all stop fighting and having wars and all of that and just get along, we could use all of that energy to do something really cool, to maybe advance medicine or to advance anything, to advance space exploration or how we live. And instead we're using up all of our energy arguing about things that don't, things that are sort of irrelevant if you look at it in the big universe.
Yeah, I know we have so many people today, so much potential, but it
Yeah,
seems to be kind of countering itself, so we don't get any benefit out of it. It's like,
right.
if you have 40 people pushing on a rock and 20 of them are pushing from one side versus the other side, that's equivalent to zero people pushing on the rock.
Exactly. Actually, I actually started writing a book about aliens. It's not, I mean, I don't want to make it very spacey, but it's about some aliens coming to Earth. And the whole point of the book, and I think I was in a bad mood this day, the whole point of the book was to make all people on Earth feel badly about how stupid we are
Mm.
sometimes, and that the Earth, basically these guys, show up to Earth and they're sort of like monitors. They're like Earth monitors trying to, keep us a little bit in line. So I've got about 100 pages of that book written, and I think, that'll be one of my projects. So, you know,
So how do you go about writing? I mean, like, what's your process?
I don't have a great process because I have so many other things that I do in between, with my family and my work. So I just kind of sit down and write when I can. Um, so I don't have, my process is not good, but once I get into it, I can really get into it. It's easy for me to write the stuff down. The hard part for me is the editing, because my grammar is not great because I don't care enough. It's like just read it and don't worry about it, So that's my process is no process. I'm not much of a planner. It's just I start writing, and the characters are really well developed. And I don't know if it sounds cliche and people say this, they do take over. The characters know what they're going to do. And so it's almost like I don't have to come up with anything because they tell me in a way, not like little voices in my head, but, I just know what's going to happen.
Would you take a trip to space if you could?
Oh, that's interesting. So my husband is a therapist, and he definitely says that he would do it. He says, "Sonny, sorry, honey, I love you, but I'm going." So depending on the safety, I would really love to take a trip. I would love to take a trip to a planet that we find that's habitable. Can you imagine like stepping off of, whatever means you get there with on a planet? It's just such an incredible thought to me. So if it was safe and I had a return ticket and I could see my family again, all of those caveats, and I would totally go. Yes. Would you?
Oh, I don't know. It depends on which day of the week it is. Sometimes I'm like, yes, I'll go. And then other days I'm like, maybe I'll watch the other people going.
Right, right. I mean, other people can go in front of me. So that's, yeah. So if it was safe and I knew I could come back and, see my kids and all of that, then man, I'm in. I'm in. Because I just can't even imagine, like, are the trees red? Like what's happening with the science? What's happening with all of the different elements? What color is, the ground? It, it's just mind-boggling to think of what's out there and what we don't know. I love that.
Um, what would it take for you to consider immigrating to Mars?
Um, oh, safety, you know. So are you talking like right now? Well, not right now, but if it's, as it becomes terraformed and everything,
Um,
it would be hard. You'd have to talk me into it because it wouldn't take much for, things to go badly, if you know what I mean.
well, I just wonder if one motivation might be things get so messed up on Earth. I mean, if we have like nuclear war, the threat of nuclear war here,
Like,
people might be like, Mars is really challenging, but it's a natural kind of challenge, not one of these uncontrollable human challenges.
right, right. I mean, that's what they base so many of those, movies and TV shows on, that Earth gets, unlivable and people have to go. And in that case, then you go. You go and you hope for the best. Life, nothing is guaranteed. So even here.
Now, that 200-year question, if we flip that around a little bit and kind of put yourself in sort of the mind of a high schooler living 200 years from now,
Hmm.
going to history class, and for some reason they decided to do a project on the 2020s. What do you hope they're able to write about this decade? I mean, like, what do you think would be
Wow.
remembered
So
about this
far,
decade?
good. But hopefully that far in the future, hopefully they can write about how we fixed it instead of how we keep screwing it up. So maybe, that far in advance, they can say, all right, things were looking pretty dark, but this is how, humans came together and fixed it. That's what I would hope.
Hmm. I wonder what it would take to make that happen.
Well, that's a huge question, isn't it? I mean, you know, a lot of if you're talking about government, taking a lot of their power away, taking a lot of their money away. I mean, I've always said that government should be policy instead of politicians, because politicians get put into place and maybe they go in thinking they're going to do something good, but it feels like something gets distorted along the way and power happens or they sell their soul to get into their position somehow. And something I feel just goes wrong. So I wondered, and I don't know if this is true, that somewhere I heard that Switzerland is like this, that it's more about the policy and not about the politician. That why can't, as Americans, why can't we have policies on the agenda instead of a person? Because not, I think if you ask, I hope most people are kind of in the middle. I think social media and the news has pushed a lot of us into the fringes. And I don't think we are in the fringes. I think a lot of people can say, well, I agree with this view and I agree with this view. And now we're sort of forced into signing on to a political party because there's only two. And uh, I don't think that's realistic, and I think that's causing a lot of trouble. And now we all hate each other, and I hate that. That's it's ridiculous. That's the short answer. You don't want to get me on my soapbox.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing with this project. I've really, I kind of realized how generous and open people are. Um, Once you're able to make that connection, it's like
Right,
making that
right,
initial connection is
right,
difficult.
right. How did you start doing this? What got you into this?
So back in 2019, NASA had a like associate administrator who was tasked with getting humans on the moon by 2024, and he had a little lapel pin with the number of days to the end of 2024, and he was going around NASA highlighting the NASA person of the day, and at the time I was working from home, which is kind of funny after COVID.
Right,
Since everybody was working from home, and so I thought this would be kind of a cool project to get me out of the house, and you know, anyway, so it started, and now I'm so far along, and I got to keep it going to the end of
gotta keep that. Yeah,
2024.
really cool. It's really cool. Are you seeing any like weird trends of how people feel about it as time goes on?
Um, you know, there's a little bit of sampling bias. People who are kind of pro space are more likely to talk about it.
Right,
And
right,
a lot of people really have no strong feelings, but they're willing to reflect and be sociable. The feelings that you have are, that I have, I guess.
right,
Um, but I guess the trend that I basically see is people are really having trouble seeing value in it. It hasn't really been, um, um, some of them see it as being cool, but it doesn't really affect their lives, I guess.
right.
But
I understand.
what it is. So
Right. And I think that's when when you were asking me that, that's the stuff that I've learned on planetary radio. When they talk about, now I might be wrong about this, but that NASA every year has to come up with some big book about what they've learned and what's applicable to Earth. So it might not be every year, but they have to come up with this sort of information about about that. What we've learned out there and how we can use that on Earth. I don't know. You probably know this more than I, but for me, that there is a use to knowing what's out there. Also, why would you not want to know what's out there? I mean, how is just it's like living in your tiny house and not, wondering what's outside the door, you know?
yeah, no, it's a fair point. It kind of reminds me of that conversation between Sherlock Holmes and Watson, where Watson's like telling him about the solar system and everything, and Sherlock's like, "How's that going to help me? Now I have to forget
Right,
all
right,
that stuff." You know.
right.
So
But that's
uh,
our society, right? That's our society, like what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me now? How this everything is, down to like a 3-minute attention span or a 30-second attention span. It's, people aren't seeing past that. And I can see how they can feel that way with how things are going, right now. So I can sort of see both sides of it, but everybody just needs to open their eyes and see what else is going on in the universe. It's fascinating.
it is. It's yeah, it's really difficult. Have you heard of this movie called Idiocracy?
Um, I've heard, which one is that?
And this is the one like where essentially the smart well-to-do people put off having children, but then like the um uh, you know kind of the
Everybody else?
everybody else like the a lot of I guess dumb people have lots and lots of children, and then
Yeah.
like there's this time traveler that kind of wakes up in the future, and everything you know uh like even completing sentences is difficult, or like
Right. Right.
it's
It's
it's a
like,
really goofy movie, but it's scary because I can kind of see us heading that way.
right, right. We're thinking in such small terms anymore, it feels like, in some ways. I don't know. It reminds me of that movie. Was the movie, it's an animated movie. Oh, I can't, where the guy goes, Eva. You know what I'm talking about? The little robot guy is the only thing left on Earth, and everybody has gone to the spaceship.
Oh, yes, yes.
I
And
don't know.
he's like a square
Right,
guy, and
right,
he's like
right, right. If I'm
what is
blanking
the
out.
name of that?
Right. And I mean, that's if you think about, what he finds on the spaceship is people can't even stand up and walk because they're in chairs. you know, you lost use of their muscles, they've lost everything, you know, like their whole everything about them is sort of atrophied, you know, and somehow it feels like maybe we're doing that to ourselves, you know, mentally or emotionally, you know.
I know we try to make our lives more comfortable, but then comfort kind of breeds weakness in a way.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's like, and I can understand how kids today feel like things are really bad, especially after the pandemic. I can see that. But they're also not looking back in history, or they're not being told to look back in history where a lot of really dark things have happened and then we've come out of it, you know. So it feels like that that very short-sightedness is coming from thinking that there is no tomorrow and that the planet's going to end and, you know, it's all over, so who cares, why should I even try, you know. I mean, I've heard that coming out of kids, and I wish there was a way to say, you know, we've been down before, and, you know, we need you guys, we need you young people and your young brains to, you know, work on this and help figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's like also, they don't have to confront the little challenges that help them build up the skill to
Right.
confront the big challenges. So it's almost like, having somebody lay in bed for 10 years and ask them to get up and run a marathon.
Right. That's exactly what happened in that movie. Yeah. But I mean, I think that they feel like they're having other challenges, and they are. I mean, they're having challenges that we didn't have as kids. You know, we didn't have, you know, could you imagine? I say it to sometimes to whoever is willing to listen, that can you imagine like in 1985 that somebody told you that you would be holding a phone in your hand all the time and that you would just walk around with a phone in your hand? It's unthinkable. So their lives are so different, you know, that we know when they say we don't understand them, that's true, but they also don't understand us, you know. And again, it's one of those things where maybe we need to meet in the middle, you know, and say, all right, I understand this is what you're going through. And they're going through a bad time, you know, with the pandemic. I can't imagine. Can you imagine being a high school senior in 2020 and all of that stuff is gone? No, you know, no prom, no nothing, you know, no graduation. So they've got their challenges, but um, I think when you have a challenge, you kind of have to open up and say, what can I learn? You know, what can I learn historically, and what other things can I think about?
Yeah, actually, my youngest son was a high school senior in 2020. So,
Oh wow! So you know,
I, well, you know, I had a front row seat, but
right?
sometimes it's hard to fully comprehend. Also,
Right. Yeah, my daughter was getting her master's degree in 2020, and that whole graduation just, or it was 2021, I think. That just went away. It was gone. Oh, sorry. It's your master's degree, but whatever. You know, we'll have a graduation. And they did say we'll have graduation next year, but none of those kids wanted to go back.
right?
And you know, it's a year in the past. So I mean, it's going to be one of those things. But again, we've had horrible things happen on this planet many times, and we hopefully can get ourselves out of it. I'm hopeful. Or
Me,
stupid. I'm not sure which one.
me too.
Yeah, there
I
you go.
I I think we can figure a good way out, but it's not obvious that we will, and maybe not everybody does. Maybe
Right,
it's some people do, and I guess it's always been the story.
right, right. That's true.
Well, Gabby, thank you so much for your time. That's pretty much all the questions I had, but is there something you wanted to add or talk about that we didn't get to?
No, just everybody, you know, look at space, look at what's out there and see what's out, you know, beyond what's, you know, what you think is shutting you down, sort of. And read my book. It's called South of Happily. I know, I'm sorry, I have to do it. And my
Absolutely.
website is www.anderson-author.com. And there's all sorts of fun stuff. There's book information, and actually I'm going to do, because there's a lot of, it's about a Hungarian immigrant. It's about a young woman who's the daughter of Hungarian immigrants. And there will be podcasts on there that I think I'm actually going to do with my mother about how to pronounce some of the Hungarian words in the book. And I did a test one, and everybody just cracked up listening to my mom, who's 90, sit there and scold me about my Hungarian. So it's pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well,
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
yeah, thank you so much for coming, and I'll have to check out your website as well. So,
All right. Thank you so much.
okay, bye-bye.
Bye.